Okay. Welcome, everyone. This is the meeting of the Mayor and Council of Princeton, New Jersey. It is May 17th, 2022. Welcome to the meeting. Madam Deputy Clerk, could we have the meeting statement, please?
Notice of this meeting was provided in accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act and state regulations governing remote public meetings, including the time, date, and location of the meeting, and clear and concise instructions to the public for accessing the meeting and making comments. In addition, the agenda and all related materials were posted electronically and made available to the public on Princeton's meeting portal in advance of the meeting.
Thank you. Could we have the roll call, please?
Ms. Perone-Lambros?
Here.
Ms. Niedergang?
Here.
Mr. Cohen?
Here.
Ms. Fraga?
Here.
Ms. Sachs?
Here.
Mr. Newland?
Here.
Mayor Frida?
Here. Thank you. Okay. Let me just go over what we're going to do here this evening. So this is a continuation of the work session that we had a little while back where we were discussing cannabis. At that last meeting, there were 30-some people that were still waiting with their hands raised to talk that we weren't able to get to. So we are going to get to them this evening. Our technology expert, Adam, in the background there, will bring people over one by one. So I would just say to everyone, hopefully the 30-some people know who they are, but it's really important that you make sure the Zoom name you're using this evening is the same as the Zoom name you used at the last meeting, or we're not going to know that it's you. So I'm going to assume for the vast majority of people, that's not a problem, but just mentioning it just in case. In the agenda package, so if you had gone on our website and clicked on the agenda, you would see that the presentations from the March 29th meeting are there and available for reference, as are all the emails that came in, 70-some emails, 76 or so, I believe it was. So all that information is there. People are more than welcome and encouraged to go and look at all that, refresh your memories, see what people had to say so far. So we are going to go to the 30-some people that had their hands up from the last meeting. When that's completed, we'll go to a council discussion. When the council discussion is over, we'll just see what time it is and figure out whether we're going to continue after that or just call it a night. Again, this is a work session, which means we're not taking a vote on anything this evening. This is just a discussion and gather information meeting. So having said all that, Adam, can you start to bring the people that are in line, so to speak, in so they can comment? And just everyone, as you come in, we do have a timer. You have 3 minutes, so just watch the timer. Try to think of what you want to say ahead of time so that you get everything in. And please just state your name and address so we have it for the minutes. Other than that, we're good to go. Thanks, Adam. We're good.
Okay, Mayor. First speaker is going to be Pieter.
Okay.
Hi, this is Pieter Vermoortre, Hemlock Circle. Mr. Mayor, Council, we have a recovering drug addict in the family whose gateway drug was cannabis. So for us, legalization of recreational cannabis is personal. It's too close to home, and frankly, it's painful to see we're having the debate even on whether or not to roll out a red carpet for the cannabis industry of what is essentially a psychoactive and addictive substance. I mean, after all, we've moved to this town to raise our children. What we have as a family have gone through is unfathomable, and I do not wish this to anyone. We have had to recalibrate our expectations, and years into recovery, we're still very much into uncharted waters. Addiction is for life, and this is no longer about which education to pursue for your child and which college to get into, but rather plotting for survival. And it has been a humbling journey, and we have come to realize that this can happen to everyone. So on the topic of tonight, I mean, legalization is also legitimation. And allowing storefronts in downtown Princeton is legitimizing recreational cannabis to our children here at the local level. So the way I see it is, even if we lose one additional Princeton resident to drug addiction, the cost-benefit analysis will be a negative one for this town. And so, in conclusion, Mr. Mayor and Council, please do not allow recreational cannabis dispensaries in this town. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, next speaker is Shenwei Zhao.
Thank you very much. Good evening. I'm actually going to read one of the letters we sent to the council that's signed by the 305 members of the Asian/Chinese community in Princeton. Dear Mayor, Princeton council members, our neighbors, and the Princeton local media, Asian communities represent about 17 to 20% of population in Princeton. We're writing to express our strongest objection to the establishment of retail cannabis shop in Princeton. Creating and promoting easy access to the recreational use of controlled substance known for causing addiction, depression, and mental disorders among all age groups is bad for Princeton, bad for our children, and against the cultural value of our culture, the core value of our culture. In 2020, we joined the majority of Princeton and voted for decriminalizing the marijuana use. However, we did not vote for rapid retail cannabis commercialization. We do not oppose the medical use of marijuana. As a matter of fact, cannabis has been used in traditional Oriental medicine for thousands of years, yet its recreational use still remains illegal in most of the Eastern countries, if not all of them. Here in the US, it remains a legally controlled substance at the federal level. Most of us still retain in our memory the horrible image of a prevalent opium dens in the 19th century, where addictive substance opium was sold and consumed. We recognize the opium and the cannabis are two different substances with different addictive potentials, but we know how much harm substance addiction can cause to individuals and to the community. We are extremely concerned that this retail cannabis establishment may come to our town. Legal or not, the risk is real. Marijuana remains a highly addictive substance in the 21st century, regardless of how it is packaged, how modern the retail store may look, how upscale and trendy it sounds. It still causes addiction, links to a range of mental health problems, exacerbate mental illness, increase the risk of schizophrenia and suicide. Progressive societies like ours needs to learn from history. As a minority group in this town, we are one of the fastest growing voting demographics. We unequivocally support racial and social justice. However, we believe that the quote-unquote unanimously adopted report released by the Princeton Cannabis Task Force in November of 2021 failed to address many other critical issues at the local level, including but not limited to education, public health, safety, and traffic, to name just a few. Permitting cannabis retail stores is to create new problems before solving old ones. We therefore support the statement released by the BOE and the resolution and the supporting documents proposed by the members of the Board of Education in the past few months. After the release of the CTF report, it is also worth noting that the Asian community was not represented at all in the CTF.
Okay,
We are the biggest minority group. We are the biggest minority group.
Sir?
I need 15 more seconds. We urge each of the council members to consider the voice.
You got 5 seconds.
In general and the Asian community in particular. We demand an inclusive decision from the council.
Adam.
Opt out.
Thank you. All right, let's bring in folks. We have 30 some people. We really got to stick to the 3-minute limit so we get a chance, so everybody gets a chance to speak tonight. I really don't want to not get everybody that's waiting for March 29th not to be able to speak tonight. So again, please, you have 3 minutes. Really think about what you want to say and make sure it's going to fit in there. Thank you. All right, Adam, let's just keep bringing people in.
Okay, next is Tracy Dart.
Hello. Sorry, that was very quick.
basically, I am strongly opposed to any retail cannabis dispensary located anywhere in Princeton. We have a daughter in the middle school and an older daughter who went through the entire system. The concept of allowing any retail dispensary 200, 1,000, or 5,000 feet from our schools, playgrounds, public housing, and quote unquote in-town areas is a disregard for the welfare of our community. What is the favorite rite of passage to any new sixth grader coming from all of our elementary schools at the middle school? They all want to walk to town. Our middle schoolers and high school students do and like to walk to town. And as a community, we've worked hard to encourage a sustainable environment by encouraging walking and cycling for all ages. Comparing the location of liquor stores for the proposed location of cannabis dispensaries is absurd. There are clearly stated open container laws prohibiting the use and consumption of alcohol in Princeton, but we haven't yet really considered that for marijuana. Basically, Renee Obregon spoke eloquently at our last meeting about reasonable access, and legalization should not be confused with easy access. Princeton and I too voted for the legalization and decriminalization, but dispensary locations are a very different issue. Please consider our children and our town as we walk through this very important decision for our future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next is Sherry S.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Sherry Saltarelli on Nassau Street. We've heard from residents, mental health professionals, physicians, and those directly harmed by cannabis dependency speak against Princeton pot shops. This is not prohibition. Council and Cannabis Task Force member Eve Niedergang is quoted in Princeton Magazine about post-legalization availability. Quote, "You'll be able to sit at your computer, go to a website, and say, I want this or I want that." In council meetings, council president and Cannabis Task Force member Letitia Fraga says she is already concerned about the mental health of members of her community. The members of her community are members of my community, members of our Princeton community for whom I am genuinely concerned. Council member Leighton Newland was quoted in the Daily Princetonian, quote, "Let me first start by saying that Princeton is not broke. Are there some things we can do better? Yes, there are, but there are a host of issues that will be important to Princeton going forward. Probably first and foremost is our human infrastructure, how we fulfill our moral obligation to each other as citizens," unquote. People young and old are trying to recover from a pandemic, yet the council's highest priority is to bring cannabis closer to everyone in our community. Council and mayor, your words have meaning and actions speak louder than words. The decisions you make have an impact on everyone in our collective community. Once opened, a pot shop is permanent and the negative effects cannot be undone. Princeton pot shops are not smart growth. Princeton pot shops are not wise choices. What do you call it when you do something even though you know it is wrong or will harm someone else? In this case, bringing cannabis closer to our community, especially closer to those most vulnerable, is called pure, simple greed. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, next is Rita Rafalovsky.
Hi, everyone. This is Rita Rafalovsky. I'm from Library Place. First and foremost, I want to point out that the decision in front of Town Council is whether to open retail cannabis shops. I'm stressing this point because several neighbors mentioned that they would like to treat various health ailments by taking recreational marijuana. The decision today is not about medical marijuana shops. Medical cannabis is a different type of license and the product is taxed differently. Second, there is no evidence that Princeton residents want cannabis shops. Proponents of retail cannabis shops often like to say that 70+% of Princeton residents voted to legalize marijuana, and therefore this is a green light and even a mandate to open stores. I'm one of the people who voted to legalize. I want to remind Town Council and neighbors that the decision to legalize cannabis and cannabis commercialization at the municipal level are mutually exclusive decisions. And it's always been this way. It's the law. This is why we have the phenomenon in California and in other more mature markets where the majority of municipalities chose to opt out of cannabis shops, even though the majority of residents voted to legalize cannabis. No survey or referendum was conducted by the Cannabis Task Force to find out who has a majority of vote, the pro side or the anti-retail cannabis shop side. That homework has simply not been done. Third, I'd like to thank the Board of Health for looking out for our community. Cannabis is not harmless and is not a magic herb. Cannabis of today is not the same product of the 80s and 90s. Personally, I'm not against people growing their own weed at home because it's a lot less harmful than the stuff at a store. The cannabis industry doesn't want you to grow your own plants. They want your money. This is why it is very illegal to grow your own pot in New Jersey. Unlike the potted plant you might have had at your house, today's commercial pot has additives and can have very high levels of THC, which is responsible for the high and for the addiction it causes. The CRC New Jersey has no doctors on its panel. That is alarming. How much THC is too much? Too much can land you in the hospital. Cannabis can cause permanent psychosis, can have negative interactions with prescription medicines, and can cause other health harms. Because of the risks cannabis poses, the responsible thing to do is to evaluate this decision through the public health lens. We need to ask ourselves whether we have the tools in place to manage the side effects of more people using cannabis. The truth of the matter is that we already have a problem of cannabis use in schools and in our community. We're not managing well, and it's about to get worse. Shouldn't we address existing issues first and demonstrate to ourselves that we know how to educate our community, protect the vulnerable, and treat the addicted? Other than a meager 2% in tax revenue and improved convenience for recreational cannabis users, opening cannabis shops in town is not the responsible thing to do at this time. The right thing to do is to wait to improve our community drug education and to push the CRC to fine-tune cannabis THC regulation and testing. These are the gating factors to opening cannabis shops in town.
Thank you, Rita.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, Adam.
Okay, next is Zhang Hong.
Hey, is it me?
Yes, sir.
All right. Yes, so let me find. Yeah, so first I want to say that I'm strongly against opening the marijuana dispensaries into Princeton. The last time a presenter mentioned President Obama. Indeed, in 2014, President Obama said he views smoking pot as a bad habit and vice. Why should we promote a bad habit to our kids? If marijuana can reach the hands of teens when it is hard to get, it will penetrate way more of them if there's a store in town. Setting up marijuana shops in town is to make a profit for a small group on the cost of the public. So Colorado Department of Public Health shows that hospitalization related to marijuana nearly tripled from 1313 per 100,000 hospitalizations in 2011 to 3,025 by 2015. According to a study reported by the National Institute on Drug Abuse, employees who tested positive for marijuana had 55% more industrial accidents, 85 more injuries, and 75 more absenteeism compared to those who tested negative. All these financial and health costs have to be shouldered by the people of Princeton. Many supporters of cannabis stores use micro business owned by minorities on the front page of their propaganda. In fact, the industry is backed by big monies and special interest groups like big tobaccos. Also, they are defaming the colored community by linking addictive substances.
Hong, we've lost you. We can't hear you now.
Minorities. If they want marijuana products, they can get them.
All right, Adam, let's go to the next person, please.
Okay, next is Smita Brunnermeyer.
Hi, I'm Smita Brunnermeyer from McLean Circle in Princeton. I'm a longtime resident of Princeton, and I'm strongly opposed to the opening of retail marijuana shops in our town. While I agree that most voters in New Jersey voted to legalize marijuana, many voters, including myself, did so to remedy racial disparities in enforcement and incarceration. And just because something is legal also doesn't mean that we need to cite it within our town, and especially within walking distance of schools. For example, just because guns, pornography, gambling, etc. are legal, we choose and make a decision not to open shops because we don't want to normalize their use within our towns. And I think cannabis falls in the same category. I do not oppose marijuana use by adults. Everybody can make their own decisions about what they want to do. But I do think that adults already have easy access to marijuana within easy driving distance down Route 1. And it should not be easier to go buy marijuana than it is to go buy food or groceries. Or even gasoline, right? So we have to get in our car and drive a few minutes to fill our cars up with gas. So it shouldn't be easier to just walk down and buy pot than it is to buy gas or groceries. Finally, I believe the social justice idea has been hijacked by big business. No one has surveyed minority communities to ask what their opinions are. We are misinterpreting the vote to legalize marijuana as support by minorities for marijuana sales within Princeton. And what I would suggest is that if we really, as a wealthy town, are interested in supporting minorities who've been disproportionately affected and incarcerated because of a past war on drugs, what we need to be doing is take our money and spend it in Trenton and Lawrenceville, which has a higher concentration of minority populations, and let the tax revenues benefit them, right? And so I see no urgency and no cost benefit calculation which justifies the opening of marijuana if there is a risk to our children. And I cede my time here. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next speaker is Sheila Gayakin.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Sheila Gohagan. I live on Walnut Lane. I'd like to take a minute to shine a light on something that is right in front of our eyes, but we may be overlooking. It's the large number of big, beautiful human brains that are participating in this vigorous debate about the pros and cons of cannabis dispensaries. My recollection is that almost 300 of our big, beautiful brains showed up to participate in the last meeting on 3/29. I believe the number was 300, to debate the merits of cannabis dispensaries. These beautiful brains of ours are our community's biggest asset, our biggest treasure, and our biggest hope for the future. Yet our collective brain trust is investing its precious energy on discussing the merits of selling a substance that would dull, anesthetize, and reduce the overall capacity of our biggest asset. If the goal of having cannabis dispensaries is to achieve social justice gains, what would happen if these same big, beautiful brains focused on inventing needle-moving, scalable programs to improve social justice in this town? Not just gains for the 1, 2, or 3 potential entrepreneurs of color, but sustainable gains that lift up all generations of color, including future generations. Why would we promote cannabis use when cannabis users could be blocked from future jobs as bus drivers, surgeons, heavy equipment operators? Why would we assume entrepreneurs of color only aspire to own cannabis stores? Maybe entrepreneurs of color want to run real estate firms, law offices, beauty salons. Lord knows Princeton could use a good soul food restaurant. Maybe entrepreneurs of color would prefer the town create small business loans or programs for entrepreneurs of color to build businesses of all kinds, not just cannabis dispensaries. Or maybe we'd like to use some of our educational budget to create after-school tutoring to lift up all generations. Surely our aggregate brain power could be used to co-create more sustainable, more scalable programs that could benefit more generations of color. How about we invest our brain power in building a community center that offers job training, job placement, childcare for parents who work long hours, seed funding for small businesses. These are the kind of needle-moving, sustainable innovations that our collective brains could be working on together. Instead of talking about how we can inject more intoxicants into our community, which will only reduce our collective brain power, let's use our collective brain power, our most precious asset, to figure out how to build more.
Sheila, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have David Jenkins.
David, can you unmute yourself?
Yes, hi, thank you, Town Council. I'm Dave Jenkins. I live on Leabrook Lane, and this issue is important to me. So I'll share a Ben Franklin quote we've all heard before. That's "An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure." And I would really like the Town Council and all the town government functions to back up the difficult job we as parents have today, which is to communicate to our youth that they are better off without cannabis. Let's stick with prevention so we can avoid the horrors of youth cannabis addiction and cannabis use syndrome. I don't feel like the CTF is doing parents any favors because they are basically promoting a message of consumption, which is the opposite of prevention. So Town Council, please don't fight us parents on this. We need you to be on our team. That is shoulder to shoulder with parents, communicating a unified message of prevention with respect to cannabis. I'll leave you with this one last thought. Why is the town spending so much time and resources on something that is literally dividing rather than uniting the town? Council should find a project that has majority support of the town residents and can energize and unite us. I read some comments from Mayor Frieda in Town Topics, and I think Councilwoman Peron Lambros is also involved with an idea that I think is really great, which is honoring two Princeton historic figures like Einstein and Paul Robeson at the site of the old Triumph Brewery. And I think it's a really awesome idea that we should think about and use our energies to support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next is Venkat YJ.
Can you unmute yourself? There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I'm Venkat YJ, and I live on Windermere Way in Princeton. My family and I moved last fall here. I have two kids that go to Princeton public schools, one to the high school and the other to the middle school. Little did we know after moving in that Princeton was considering opening pot shops within walking distance to schools. What is even more shocking to learn was the process by which this council was hoping to arrive at a recommendation. An unfair process with no equitable representation of Princeton residents, let alone the diverse groups. An unjust process, as the Cannabis Task Force had members with significant conflicts of interest. An unscientific process, as the CTF report itself did not have any basic levels of research done to support its recommendations. In summary, in the eyes of the Princeton residents, this CTF and the Cannabis Store evaluation process is a gimmick. Disband CTF, drop this proposal to open any pot shops in Princeton. I urge the council members and the mayor to focus on other pressing issues facing Princeton. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Okay, next is Yang Yang.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. I'm Yang Yang, and thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council, for hosting the second meeting and to hear us. Briefly about myself, I received my PhD in educational psychology from Purdue University in Indiana. and I've been living in Princeton for 7 years in the Johnson Park area. And I was raised by parents and the culture that believe it is better to save trouble and to be compliant. But this time I just can't because this is closely related to the today and future of the town I love. First of all, simply put, I don't see how opening a retail dispensary has any benefits at all for the foreseeable future. As a researcher myself, I have not seen any longitudinal studies or data on the benefits of a cannabis shop on the town, their people, their children. By longitudinal, I'm talking about decades of research. Why is this important? One very well-known example is when DDT was developed as the first of the modern synthetic insecticides in the 1940s. It was believed to be very effective in many ways, that it was widely used across the country. What did we learn later? Later meaning 3 decades later, with mounting evidence of its declining benefits and environmental and toxicological effects, a cancellation order was in place only after 3 decades. Imagine that, how many generations is that? And it concerns me when I heard minimal evidence of opening a cannabis dispensary, not to mention its scientific aspect of the rationale of opening a store in Princeton. Second, I remember there was a speaker last time. I believe his name was John. He was one of the speakers who supported the opening of a retail store. And he, according to him, was a long-term user. And when John said, quote, "I would rather walk into a store and see what I buy than order online," because he says, quote, "do not trust the mailing service of a retail store." That actually makes me even more concerned. He does not have confidence in the legal enforcement of cannabis stores that offer online ordering options. How could we have any confidence, or how could there be a reason at all to open a store if the law enforcement is not solid enough? Last but not the least, reports on the robbery of retail dispensaries also is concerning. As a resident in Princeton, I feel that my family are safe and my friends are safe, my kids are safe, but I won't feel the same way if a cannabis store is in place right down the road. To end what I'd like to share today, I'd like to express my strong opposition, and thank you all for listening.
Thank you. April, can you unmute yourself? April. Okay, Adam, let's try the next person.
All right, next is Charles.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, Charles. We can hear you.
Yep. Hi. It's actually Liam. Sorry. My son just used my Zoom before this, so I didn't have a chance to change my name. Hi, everyone. Yeah, this is Liam living in Little Brook area. So I am calling to express my strong against of opening the cannabis dispensaries in Princeton. My friend and I actually went to the van lift on Route 1 in 4 different days. 3 out of the 4 days, we saw police cars and police officers there. We talked to them. They said they came very often because this was a cash-only business. We already have insufficient police in Princeton. Remember last November when the thieves came to steal the luxury cars in Little Brook area in my neighborhood? The owner called the police and was told that there was no patrol police cars available in the area. Mayor, I remember you went there as well. Do you want us to call you, Mayor, before 911 every time? So how can we afford dedicating 3 police cars and 3 to 6 police officers to secure those 3 cannabis dispensaries? Well, people may say, yeah, let's hire more police officers. Oh, I check. A first-year patrol officer in Princeton is paid over $66,000 a year plus other costs. Then that means we need to pay additional $200,000 to $400,000 or more a year because of these 3 cannabis dispensaries. I don't know how it would be worth it. Also, when we were there at the Zan Live, we saw the front parking lot was always full with about 10 cars, and also the back parking lot has about 5 to 10 cars. There were only 1 to 3 cars at the medical marijuana user parking spot. So you can estimate the percentage of medical cannabis users. On a Friday afternoon,
We've lost you. We can't hear you now. All right, Adam, let's go to the next person, please.
Okay, next is Waijia.
Hello, can you hear us? Hi, are you there? Do you want to say something? All right, Adam, let's try the next person.
Adam, we can't hear you either. You're muted.
Thank you. Next is Jian Chen.
Hi, you need to unmute yourself.
Hello?
Yeah, just speak up a little bit louder.
I already spoke at the last session, I think.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thanks for admitting that. We appreciate it.
All right, looks like it's Thomas Kelly.
Okay.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great, thanks. I'm Tom Kelly. I'm a professor at the university, and I've got 3 kids in the Princeton Public Schools. I really appreciate the chance to speak. So there's a lot of people on both sides of this issue who speak with a lot of certainty about what's going to happen if and when we do this. People who are in favor often say there won't be any downsides. We already know there won't be any real downsides. On the other hand, people who are opposed sometimes make it seem like we already know it's going to be a big disaster. I myself don't think we know any of those things. At least I certainly don't claim to know them myself. But precisely because I think we're in the situation of not really knowing how things would go, I think it really behooves us to be cautious. And when I think about this as honestly as I can in terms of the potential upsides versus the potential downsides and risks, I really think it makes sense to not do this at the current time. I mean, the status quo, Princeton, without these dispensaries, is an awfully nice place. It's not perfect, but it's awfully nice. So given that I do think this would be a relatively radical change, I don't think we need to be on the cutting edge here. I don't think we should roll the dice right away. For example, here's something I think we can all agree is a nice feature of Princeton, even though when we disagree about these more controversial things, it has virtually relatively little, basically zero serious crime. I mean, one incident from months ago was mentioned, but compared to other places, basically zero crime. Would that still be true if you've got 3 cash-only pot dispensaries, the very type of place that a previous speaker mentioned really has become a magnet for crime elsewhere? I honestly don't know the answer to that. I don't think we should roll the dice. And you could say the same thing about various other attractive features. How exactly would this affect property values? I don't think we really know. So I don't think we should experiment. Especially when lots of surrounding towns have already said no to these. So you're really talking about the possibility of Princeton's becoming a primary regional supplier. And that could really end up being a radical difference in terms of what the town is like. So I think this idea, this is fear mongering, this could never happen here, we could never have an increase in crime, property values wouldn't go down. I don't think that's warranted. Finally, I just wanted to briefly raise a concern that's already been mentioned about the role that the Cannabis Task Force has been playing in this. One concern really is, I think in various ways, the task force was unrepresentative of Princeton and doesn't really reflect the diversity of our community. I mean, the fact that there are multiple people on the task force with direct financial connections to the pot industry and no Asian Americans, that's not a good look, I think. People have been talking about this. So if we do go and just sign off on what the task force is recommending at this point, I think a lot of people in the community will be unhappy and be right to be unhappy with the way things went down. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, that appears to be everyone who was here last meeting, except the names may have changed for a few. So we're going to bring over Alberto. Excuse me.
Alberto's on the list, you said?
There is an Alberto on the list?
No, right, because right now, oh, I'm sorry, Adam, I just want to make sure we're only doing people that were on the list, because then we're going to go to council discussion.
Understood. I cannot confirm that it is the same one. I do apologize.
I'll be able to confirm as soon as I hear his voice.
Okay, go for it.
All right, thank you.
Wow, this is very exciting. I'm the only one who needs to be verified.
That's him.
Gosh, I'm so excited to be here. It's particularly exciting to be the only one who I guess is pro and deeply pro cannabis, with such an avalanche of eloquent and thoughtful and convincing concerns and opposition. So thank you everybody for lending so much energy and concern for this topic, and for the opportunity to share and to represent an alternative view. I think one of the things that I think is important is that the optics of this particular meeting are deeply oppressive, right? Because there's this uniform condemnation of something that is a life or death gift for many people. So it's a complicated issue, and it's an honor to represent an alternative view for the purpose of diversity, which is important to any kind of conversation, and to have the experience that I'd like to share about that. So my statement, if you will, is that the concerns and arguments in opposition I find completely convincing. I think that the thoughts about the hypocrisy of social justice, the overblown concept of the benefits, the lack of thought about the health risks, and the lack of overall planning are real, and are convincing in the argument that we should not open a pot shop immediately, for one, or to sell cannabis. But the issue is that this really isn't about selling cannabis. That's not the opportunity. And it's that those criticisms are not of a pot shop in Princeton. Those are criticisms of cannabis in the state and the world, and the long history of oppression around cannabis. And I think that the real opportunity is to meet those concerns and have thought leadership around how to support the cultural shift, because it's a dramatic cultural shift from one that has divided our achievement-oriented culture from plants. This is a plant, and it is magical, and it is life-giving for many, many people. It may not be, it's not required. I'd love to be in a room with everybody and ask how many people have smoked pot, with all of these opinions. And for many people, it has brought huge joy and peace and healing. And my main statement is that I think the opportunity is to take the great, big brains that Sheila was talking about and solve, these thoughts, because delivery service is going to be bringing pot into this town, no matter what we do. And I appreciate the chance to be part of that conversation.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Adam, did we exhaust the list you said? I'm sorry.
Yes, Mayor. There doesn't appear to be anyone with the same name at least, that is here now.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, so why don't we go to the council discussion, which at the beginning of the meeting, that's what we said we'd do next. Actually, Eve had gotten to me a little earlier and she wanted to go first. So Eve, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I have something I'd like to read that I've written, thought about and written over the last couple of weeks, not to disrespect anyone who came tonight. And I do appreciate the passion that people are bringing to this topic. My printer isn't working, so I'm going to be staring off to the side to read it on another screen. So forgive me for that. Change is hard. That is one of the truisms of life and one that has been brought home to me often as a member of council. But our choice is not whether to stay the same or to change. Our choice is how to shape change so that it works for our community to the extent possible. In this context, and in the current context of legal cannabis in New Jersey, I continued to believe that Princeton should approve and regulate its own cannabis dispensary, one that is locally owned, focused on customer service and education, embraces equity and racial justice in ownership, hiring, and promotions, and is committed to being a vital part of this vibrant community. Cannabis is legal in New Jersey. Recreational sales started about a month ago with, aside from some long lines, no problems that I've been able to document. This is the new reality and one that all of us need to adjust to, regardless of our opinion on legalization, which is a done deal. There are a number of reasons why I believe council should say yes to a cannabis dispensary in the community. Control over the entity selling the product in the community, which we don't get when it's delivered here or when Princetonians buy from Big Cannabis in other locations. Shopping local to bring in business to our shops that are competing with Amazon and other online realtors. Our businesses say to us that experiences and things that bring customers into stores are particularly helpful with them. Bringing in tax dollars to support racial equity initiatives and cannabis education, destigmatizing a drug whose illegality has wreaked havoc on communities of color in this country and in the state, and an impetus to start a conversation with our children about substance use and abuse. Many, although not all, of the concerns that have been raised about cannabis retail in town relate to cannabis legalization. For example, the potency of current cannabis products, driving under the influence, people smoking cannabis in public, accidental overdoses, etc. These issues will remain whether cannabis is sold here in Princeton or not. This fact is also true of underage cannabis use. Legal cannabis hasn't been available in Princeton yet, has not been available in Princeton, yet use by those under 21 is common in a way similar to alcohol. Illegal weed can be purchased in any middle school or high school in our community. If parents are not already having data-driven, values-based discussion with their children about drug use, now is the time to start. Despite all of the above, however, I am recommending that we not move forward with an enabling ordinance for retail cannabis sales at this time. I've come to this decision because the impact of this issue on the community has been disturbingly and perhaps uniquely divisive. It has also consumed a tremendous amount of council's time and bandwidth, mine especially, and it is not even one of council's key goals for the year. I know that our health department, Board of Health, and Corner House will be working on identifying and delivering high quality and accurate educational materials for adults and seniors, as well as the underage population. And I'm grateful for their hard work on this issue, as I do believe such education is crucial in the era of legal cannabis. I would like to acknowledge the tremendous community engagement on this subject for many Princetonians, some of whom have taken their first step to being involved with municipal affairs by participating on this issue. I know that I speak for mayor and council when I say that we welcome your involvement and hope that you continue to be involved in municipal affairs on other issues as well. please consider applying to be a member of a board or commission, attend meetings, email us with your thoughts and concerns. Although I may have disagreed with many of you on this issue, I do believe that we Princetonians share many common interests and concerns, and I hope that we can work together on other issues in the future. I would like to express my personal appreciation and acknowledgement for the hard work of the members of the Cannabis Task Force who devoted countless volunteer hours, sometimes with multiple meetings per month over the course of a year. And I cannot let it pass. There's absolutely no conflict of interest in any way from any member of the task force, except one person who stepped down. Unless there are objections from my colleagues, however, I would recommend that the CTF's regularly scheduled meeting this Thursday will be their last, and I thank them for their service to the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Eve. Leticia?
Thank you, Mayor. I too wrote down some notes just before this meeting, but I'll do my best to actually just refer to them, not read them word for word, because I feel that I am better at expressing myself when I speak from the heart. With that said, I just want to share that throughout this process, even before the CTF issued their recommendation, especially after the CTF Cannabis Task Force issued their recommendations, I've been asked to weigh in on where I stand on this issue. And I have not done so publicly because with this, as with other issues, I'm interested in first hearing all voices. And I do mean all voices, not just the loudest ones. And I also want to say that I share some of the concerns that have been expressed about what our children have access to, what harmful substances our children have access to. I have, some of you already know, I have a daughter that graduated from PHS 20 years ago. I have two seniors who are twins who are graduating from the high school this year. And I have 5 grandchildren who are making their way through the Princeton School District. So yes, it's a concern what our children have access to. Though it may surprise you and maybe even shock you to hear that my concern is not whether there's a legal dispensary in town or not. In my opinion, the majority of voters voted in favor, not of decriminalizing, but legalizing cannabis, which to me, that also means access to cannabis and not having to go to another town or having to order online if they wish to do so. I have, and I say that because what I am most concerned, and I have been expressing what my concern is, that what our children have had access to for decades now. Knowing this, like I mentioned, I have a daughter who graduated 20 years ago, and even back then, our children have had access to illegal and dangerous substances, not 20 feet from the schools, but inside the schools. And I can only imagine that, as one of the, I think it was Sheila that referred to about our collective brain power, I can just imagine where we would be if we had been using our collective brain power to tackle that issue of what our children have had access to. I know it's the responsibility to us as parents to talk to our children, to educate them, and to also monitor, to ensure that we're aware of what they have access, what they're doing. But as far as what adults wish to do, I don't want to be in. I don't think it's in my position that we should prevent that. For those who wish it, that it should be accessible. And what Eve said, no, it is not a priority of ours. It's not a first priority. There are many others that I wish we would be working on, that we are working on, but there's always more that we can be doing as a governing body. But we always work on multiple issues. So, for me, that wouldn't prevent us. What has been really troublesome for me is that, yes, it's great that our community, especially with now that have been meeting virtually, has been so engaged. I just really appreciate how engaged they are. But at the same time, what has been very disturbing for me is what I have seen as some bullying tactics and harassment of especially not just the task force members, but anyone who disagrees. I was very, some of us have received a lot of emails, including pictures of individuals when the first day of sales in New Jersey was available, pictures of individuals standing in line at the dispensaries and referring them as potheads who should be lining up to look for work instead. I think that's very, it's just stereotyping individuals. And I just, and also, including attacks on my colleague, Eve. I know it was very stressful for you, and I wish I had been able to speak up at previous meetings when that was taking place. I know we were in listening mode, so but it was still upsetting to see that happen. And I also want to say that many of the comments, including those that, yes, it's not that I'm not in favor of legalizing cannabis, but it just should go to Trenton and places like Trenton instead. That to me, that's not only stereotyping, that's also, to me, it's indication of not just, some of it is unconscious, some of it is implicit, and some of it really truly is overt bias that for me is troubling and it is offensive. But for me, like I said, I'm more concerned of what our kids, our children, our minors have been having access to, and that's what I would want us to use our brain power to focus on. Thank you.
Thank you, Leticia. David.
Thanks. I do have a written prepared statement, which I'll read because I would be concerned that I might speak too long. I'm glad as it is that I'm not limited to 3 minutes. But before I start reading that statement, I do want to comment. I'm a little disappointed that we don't have any legal counsel on the meeting tonight. We received some new information just in the last week of a lawsuit filed against Highland Park on the grounds that they had provided for local dispensaries in their town. And I've not heard any legal analysis of the merits of that lawsuit. And I wish we had a little bit of advice about that, because I think it should also factor into our decision-making. But with that preamble, let me read my statement. So thanks to all the members of the public who have taken the time to share their opinions and their research with me on this topic. It has truly been the most difficult and confounding issue of any I have faced during my time on council. I've spoken directly with those on both sides of the question and listened carefully to the statements made during our public meetings on the topic. I finally reached the conclusion that there are strong and valid arguments on both sides of the question. On the pro side, the arguments tend to center around respecting the democratic process and accepting the implications of the expressed will of the people. If 73% or 78% of Princetonians voted to legalize marijuana, we should step up and accept the consequences of what that means. On the con side, the arguments tend to center around public health considerations, such as increased risk of substance use disorder, the correlation between cannabis use and schizophrenia, and traffic safety concerns. My decision has been made more difficult by the fact that there are studies on both sides of the issue, which ostensibly document contrary outcomes in the public health arena. Most of these exceed my limited ability to critically assess the statistical analysis involved. However, based on my common sense understanding of the factors at play, I accept that normalization of cannabis use, which both sides agree will accompany the visible presence of cannabis dispensaries in Princeton, will result in increased cannabis use. And I'm not talking about in youth, I'm talking about overall. And increased use will have negative public health consequences. If there were a trade-off between cannabis use and use of other more harmful substances like alcohol or opioids, that would change my feelings on this point. And I've been searching for evidence of such a trade-off in my research to date. But so far, to my knowledge, no one has documented any durable effect of this sort. My decision has been made easier by the fact that our choices locally will have a very limited impact for good or for ill. Cannabis is now legal in New Jersey. This means that people who want to will be able to get it easily, preserving most of the benefits regarding the express will of the people, and ensuring most of the detriments to public health. We can only nibble around the edges of the problem. A word about the social justice dimension of this debate. I find compelling the argument that big business will especially target vulnerable communities for their customer base, as they always have when marketing addictive products, as we heard at our March 29th meeting. And any benefits that accrue to individual minority entrepreneurs or potential employees from the opportunity to own or work for cannabis adjacent businesses will more than be outweighed by the negative public health impacts to those communities. I find it unlikely that we in Princeton, by tailoring our ordinances, will be able to stem that tide of well-funded exploitation. Lastly, to describe my methodology for deciding between these two valid perspectives. Maybe because my dad was an MD, I've embraced the physician's credo, first, do no harm. I've taken this to mean, in this instance, how can we shape policy to reduce harm as much as possible? To me, the harm of even a small increased incidence of substance use disorder, a couple extra car crashes annually, or an added case of schizophrenia in Princeton must outweigh the minor inconveniences to legitimate users who must purchase their cannabis from a source other than a local retail establishment. For this reason, I oppose hosting cannabis dispensaries in Princeton at this time. I want to share an analogy that I think helps me be comfortable with this decision. Good liberals have embraced minor inconveniences, such as mask mandates and social distancing, for the public health benefits they confer during the COVID pandemic, especially protecting the vulnerable in our community. I find a decision to forego local cannabis dispensaries quite analogous. It's an inconvenience protecting the vulnerable in our community. I completely respect all those who come down on the other side of the issue. And in fact, I could have done so myself if the weight of the various arguments had shifted even a little. I thank the entire community for their active engagement with this topic.
Thank you, David. We have other council comments? Michelle?
Before I comment, I just wanted to mention, I just got a note that Wei Wu did not speak last time and he had his hand up. And I just wanted to mention that before we move on, just to make sure everyone had an opportunity to speak.
Okay, well, we'll get back to public comment depending what time we get done with council comment. We tried to use the list of people that were waiting and we weren't taking new people till after council discussion.
He's not new. I mean, he is new. He did not speak. He was on the list. They said, and he was not allowed to speak. So I just wanted to mention that. Just-
Okay. All right. We'll finish our council comment and then
Very
we'll,
good.
we'll
Thanks.
catch up. Thank
All
you.
right. I'll go after Leighton. Go ahead.
Okay, sure. Leighton?
Thanks, Mayor. First, I just want to give Eve a virtual hug and say how much on a personal level, I appreciate the work that you've done on this. And I want to echo some of the thoughts of, I'm also sorry that you got beat up on any number of occasions. We all do this because we love the town of Princeton, and we can always agree to disagree. But that being said, I just want to reference that Letitia, already spoke, and what resonated with me with her comments was her talk about stereotypes and bias that we've heard earlier. So I won't go over that, but that resonated with me on some of the things we heard from the people we've heard earlier. David spoke about the democratic process. That's something from the very beginning of this entire discussion has troubled me greatly. I had something written almost a month ago. And I must admit that when I ran, I told the people of Princeton I would never lie to you, and I have given this a great deal of thought. I've talked to George D. Fernando, I've talked to Jeff Grosser, I've spent an hour and a half with Chief Morgan, and I know there are many people on this call, and you know who I'm talking to, that we've had coffee at Delicioso's. So when I say I've talked to people, you know who you are. I've talked to people for this, and I've talked to people against this. And I must say that I have never in my life seen such well-organized machinery, such motivation, and such fervor with regard to those who are opposed to opening retail marijuana stores in Princeton. In all honesty, I go to, excuse me, in a democratic process, as David said, and I got to talk about this. I go to the vote here in Princeton where 73% of the people here in Princeton voted to legalize marijuana for recreational use in the state of New Jersey. Now, many of those people, I'm assuming, who voted that way now are asking mayor and council, and it's a shame that this whole thing has been placed on our shoulder like this, but are asking mayor and council to qualify how many of those 73% actually were just voting for one thing or another, but not to have retail dispensaries in Princeton. That is an unknown number. What is also unknown is how many people of the 73% that voted to legalize recreational use in New Jersey actually were just voting for decriminalization and the social equity tip. Because that to me, in the conversations I've heard, just rings of being disingenuous. Because as I've told people who have asked me time and time again, how come they're not hearing from Black people with regard to if this is supposed to be such an equitable situation? Because quite frankly, I think people in the minority community, and I can't speak for everybody, are agnostic. It's like they don't believe the hype. They're not going to be hoodwinked and bamboozled by a mere 2% of revenues from cannabis. Now, I'm not saying that 2% of X amount of dollars would not be helpful, but I'm saying that the decision whether to say yes or no to retail cannabis dispensaries in Princeton doesn't have a damn thing to do with Black people or social equity, and it shouldn't. That should not be part of the conversation. If we decide to engage and we get monies and funding from it, then we can have that discussion. But what troubles me is that it's always convenient to put something on the backs of Black and brown people when you want to do something or you don't want to do anything. And I'm upset and disappointed that whole social equity thing has been such a big part of this discussion, because it should not be part of this discussion. I want to say Peter, Shangwai, Tracy, Sherry, Rita, Zhang, Smita, Sheila, David, Yanket, Yang, April, who didn't talk, Charles Lee, Stop and Shop, and Thomas Kelly all had a lot to say, and whatever they said and everything they said resonated with me and rang true. And then came Alberto, who blew up this whole meeting. And I'm going to be honest with you, because what Alberto did was he thought of compromise. Okay. He obviously listened carefully and recognized both the concerns expressed by those people opposed, and he offered thoughtful remarks on what he believed are positive positions. And that's what we need more of here. Everything we've done since I've been on council, we either got a right way or a wrong way. We're always keeping score. We never try to come and meet in the middle to see what could work. Now, here's what I really think. Marijuana is legal in the state of New Jersey now, and it's legal here in Princeton. And I've talked to all of the key stakeholders, and what I can tell you is that my belief, quite frankly, is that a great, regulated, beautiful, state-of-the-art, great cannabis store, maybe the greatest on planet Earth, would be an asset here in Princeton. I think it would bring new life to Princeton. I think it would bring new people to Princeton. I do not think children would fall into a black hole. I just don't. And I would also say, and I'm not trying to tell people how to raise their children, but if we are going to be a town that grows into the future, growth and the future are part of change. And instead of us being change adverse, we need to understand that smart growth is to manage smart change. So again, there are a lot of unknowns, but what for me is known is that 73% of the people here in Princeton voted to legalize recreational marijuana in the town. And I think, quite frankly, that those individuals who, and we know because they live next to us, people we know and love who live here in Princeton, smoke cannabis, they're going to buy cannabis. And why shouldn't we receive the benefit of the revenue when they purchase their cannabis? Why should we give money to Trenton or Hightstown or somewhere else? Because, oh, they got more black people there? What, like we got black people here in Princeton that don't count, that don't need help? I'm not having it. So I'm telling you, I believe that, you know, maybe people think we should wait to get more information, but for my money and for my dollar, I think smart growth is to tell the people the truth and what I'm really feeling. And I don't see a problem with a cannabis store in Princeton. I think the police will take care of it. I don't see our children falling in a black hole. And I believe in the parents, especially the parents who are calling with the fervor and the animation of how fervently they want to protect their children. I think they will do just that. And I would lastly say, let's don't forget about Corner House, one of the best prevention places in the state of New Jersey, the only one that is encompassed and encased in a municipality. Let's give ourselves some credit and let's try to move forward with smart growth and wise choices. And quite frankly, and people may be mad at me, but I told you I'd always tell you the truth. I think this checks the boxes and connects the dots. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Princeton. And again, I hope the people that I've talked to know that I was always going to tell the truth. And I have talked to everybody about this. And I thank all of you for your time and your concern. And I love you and I love your children. But I do think the cannabis dispensary in Princeton, one, to start off with, is something that could be visionary and is not going to take us down a deep black hole. Thank you.
Thanks, Leighton. Other council comments? Michelle?
It's always hard to follow Leighton. So first of all, I just want to say, thank you to my colleagues for these comments. I agree with what Eve and David have concluded. This is really divisive for our town at a time when we really need to be united and working together towards many, many goals that will impact social justice, which I feel has been, like David said, hijacked for this, for a conclusion that I just don't see where this would go. I just don't see where one dispensary bringing a 2%, which one could argue that the state really should have given municipalities a little bit of bigger piece of the pie, but it would really be a drop in the bucket. And I think once we look at the impact administratively, the education programs that we need to invest in, and other things we need to do anyway, I just don't see where we can do anything that would really be tangible and impactful for our town. And I think that there's a lot of great things that we're working on. Thank you, Sheila, for bringing up some of those things, like the community center feasibility idea. I think there's a lot that we can do for social justice, but when we tear our town apart over an issue like this, I just don't think it makes sense to move forward. So I would also say I'm not in favor of moving forward. I do want to say, though, that the engagement of new people in our town that we haven't heard from before, please keep being engaged. Your voices are really important to the process of not only this question and this initiative, but other initiatives. I've had a lot of individual and group conversations, and I think that's a silver lining in this process. And I really do believe that, we might not have had the best process. It might have some flaws. It might not always be the best way, but our intention was to have a community engagement and to have a discussion of what this is about. And I think we did that, and I think we've listened. And I'm really proud of the fact that my colleagues and I, we were able to engage with so many people. And I'm really astounded and always amazed at the passion that our community has, and so many smart people, so many people that really love this town. And that's what I think binds us and unites us. And I think we need to move forward united and not torn apart over this issue. And I just think that that's my feeling. So not maybe as eloquent as my colleagues, and I should have written it out, but sometimes I'm better spontaneous. So, but thank you. And I also just want to thank the task force, because they did, work really hard to come up with their recommendations. So I want to thank those people as well for volunteering their time. Thanks.
Thanks, Michelle. Mia, I saw you unmuted yourself.
I have nothing to say. So I am also wishing that I had written something out, but I didn't. So I'm just going to try to weave together some comments, which may not all be logically that easily woven together. But first, I did want to say that, everyone in council has spent an extraordinary amount of time on this issue, listening to people on, and I don't know if you can say both sides, because I think there are many different perspectives on this, but to the extent that there is a side of people who would like us to move rapidly and move forward on this right away, and another side of people who don't. The thing I think that has bothered me the most is that each side refers to the other as a small vocal minority. And I just want to say, as someone who's been really involved in civic life in Princeton for quite some time now, and who has been in the weeds on many of the issues that have roiled us in the last decade, this is an issue in which I have rarely seen such strong sentiment by so many people. And there are no small vocal minorities here. The other thing that has been really interesting to see is that each, to the extent that we have sides, has somehow typecast the other as either anti-social justice or conservative or wealthy, or, and I would say, of all the issues that I've been involved with, this is the one issue that completely confounds my ability to predict who on any given day reaches out to me, how they're going to feel or what they're going to say about this issue. And I've been repeatedly surprised by where people stand on this issue, and it transcends race, class, political party, age, gender, non-gender. I mean, it is really, and I'm pretty good when someone calls me and says they want to talk about something at guessing where they're going to fall out. On this, I have no idea, which has been really fascinating. So I just want to say to everyone on both sides or all sides, please, moving forward, understand that it is not helpful to continue on thinking that there's a small vocal minority on pushing or opposing. That is simply not accurate. Okay, I've spent way too much time on that. I think that the person who resonated the most with me was Thomas Kelly, and I come back to really, after all these many hours of listening, where I was in the first meeting that we had on this, which is that right now I'm wearing the cap of being a municipal official. And I did for many years professionally wear the cap of a social justice advocate. But right now I am wearing the cap of a municipal official, and I have to take into account in all my decision-making the well-being of the town as a whole. And I don't feel that it's responsible or appropriate to discount the views of two of the major institutions in our town, the Board of Health and the Board of Education, who both have urged the council, in one case, actually in both cases unanimously, to tread slowly and with caution, and to do our due diligence. And that is what I think Thomas Kelly said, that there are more things that we don't know than things that we do know. And I do feel that as a municipal official, I cannot really pinpoint very much that would come out of this that would benefit the town concretely. I think there's been a misunderstanding or some misperceptions about what the financial benefits could be. The annual revenue that would come from one dispensary in terms of tax revenue would not even be enough to build one unit of housing. And as someone who's been very involved from wearing an equity hat and looking at the town through an equity lens in our affordable housing settlement in the past few years, if I felt that this that there were possibilities to help build a more equitable town so that more people could live here through this, that would be interesting to me. But the state has set this up in a way that really does not make it appealing or financially beneficial for towns. And they seem to be scratching their heads wondering why so many towns are opting out. And I think they need only look at how they structured it financially. And maybe they may want to rethink that. But I just looking through to see if I missed anything here. I think that's basically it, that right now, we have many priorities as a council and as a town. We're just recovering from a major pandemic. There are other stressors on the town right now. And I really feel that we need to focus on those priorities. And I would say that cannabis is not a priority for me personally right now, and something that provides so little tangible benefit and does so much damage in terms of dividing the town and making it difficult for us to move forward on the things that are crucial and that we all acknowledge are essential for our well-being. I would not be able to support that. And so that's it.
Thanks, Mia. So I'd just like to add some of my thoughts on this. first of all, thank you to everybody from around town that reached out to all of us. I mean, hundreds between the people I've talked to and the people I've emailed with, it's hundreds of people. I'd like to thank the people that invited me to either talk to them in groups of them and over Zoom or in person or whatever. And, I found all those exchanges to be very respectful, very upfront. And the vast majority of people, I think, were very respectful in sharing different viewpoints, which, was kind of what we hope for and expect here in Princeton. And for the people that might not have stuck to that, that's kind of unfortunate. We should all be able to discuss any topic at any time, and different views are not a reason to attack somebody or disrespect somebody. I mean, we're not all going to agree all the time. So, let's just have our discussions and make our points and be nice about it. It's not that hard. But on this issue, I think a common theme here is we really don't know what's going to happen if you open a dispensary tomorrow, which is impossible anyway. It'd be months and months, even if we decided right now that we were going to do it. But I am fine. I am of the mind that let other towns do it before us and let's see what happens. Let's see what their challenges are, what works and what doesn't work. Again, there's no rush for this. If it's going to happen someday, then let's make sure it's planned out well. We have no education plan in the youth of the town and talk about, here's concrete steps and how we're going to do an education plan. So there's a lot that would still need to be done. David mentioned the lawsuit that was recently filed against Highland Park. And again, I'm not an attorney and I'm not trying to give a legal opinion because I can't, but the ramifications of that lawsuit, if it gets any legs, are going to be pretty impactful, not just in New Jersey, but perhaps across the country. So, they're alleging RICO violations. I mean, violations of federal law. So the town's being in Highland Park, the town is being sued. The individual council or government body members are being sued. So there's lots of reasons for us to kind of pause, because if I'm the group filing that lawsuit, I think I would just be waiting to see if Princeton does something and say, man, let me go after Princeton too, right? The name attracts all kinds of things. And we don't need to attract people coming after us to spend money on lawsuits that really we could use that money for a lot better things. Anyway, there's a whole bunch of reasons not to rush into this and to pause right now. And I agree with Eve's suggestion is CTF meets one final time, thank them for their time. And then that entity, as all task forces are supposed to do, is you create a task force, they have a mission, they've accomplished their mission, now their job's done. If at some point in the future we decide to go ahead, we have plenty of boards, committees, commissions, and other entities to try to help us with, again, like the education plan and other things. So anyway, having said that, I'm very comfortable with us not moving ahead at this point in time. A year from now, 2 years from now, who knows? Maybe something will change and we can have great public discussions again. We had 345 people on our Zoom meeting on March 29th. I think we hit, well, right now we're at 159. I think that's the high point so far this evening. So we've had a lot of public interest, which is great. So I want to thank everybody for that. So council, I just want to make sure if there's no other comments, okay.
If I may, because my bad for not reading my comments because I did miss a couple of things. And one, it just comes to mind with what has been said about, I know, and I too, I'm not implying that we need to rush into anything. I'm not. But also saying that we need to wait to see what happens in other towns implies that nobody else has done this before. When there's 14 other states that have been, have legalized, have experienced, and can have, which the Cannabis Task Force did refer to in their recommendations as to what other communities have done. I didn't mention that just last month, I attended a conference. There was a convening of Latino policymakers. It was specifically focused on emergency preparedness, but we also had roundtable talks on other issues, topics that we were working on in our communities. And these were Latino policymakers from all over the country, including those who from states where they have legalized cannabis and where they have experience with it. And what I heard from talking to them is that the same concerns, the same arguments against that we are hearing, they went through that, and it just did not. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be any concerns about anything. We always have to be weary. We always have to be. I wish we have been doing more of education and outreach, because it's not that cannabis is not in our community already. Like I said before, it's been here for decades, and we should have been addressing it. So I just wanted to say that. And something else too, I wanted to, I failed to mention my appreciation for each and every single member of the task force, Cannabis Task Force, who really gave up countless hours of their time. They're volunteers, and their recommendations that they issued was they did what they were tasked with doing. And just because of some, or I'm not saying that I agree with every single recommendation, but they did what they were tasked with doing. And it was just really unfortunate. I want to say again, how they were attacked, including all the lawn signs calling for disband the task force. To me, that's just, it's trying to, I think for me, it's a reflection of how vilified they've been. And it's up to council to, like you mentioned, Mayor, that when a task force is done with completing what they were tasked with doing, they're done. So there's no need to use those comments as disband the task force. I think that's just intentionally being hurtful. Thank you.
Thank you. Mia?
Yeah, I just wanted to say one thing, that our attorney is not here tonight, but they are the attorneys who are defending that lawsuit in Highland Park, and they did send it and ask the council to review it. I think people in town should understand that on any issue, not just this issue, that we do need to prioritize, and our staff only has so much bandwidth for any changes. And I think another thing that I didn't mention, but it was definitely a part of my consideration on this issue, is that people for whom it is very important to have access to cannabis do have the ability to order and have it delivered. I wish that we had that ability for more food options in Princeton. But there is, I think that was part of my thinking. I just, in the whole scheme of looking at how we prioritize, how much bandwidth we have as elected officials, and what the priorities are of our municipality, and who stands to gain and who will be harmed. Those were all important considerations for me. So just wanted to add that.
Thank you. David.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add one comment about the finances, which is, I sort of see the income from the tax that we're able to levy locally if we were to have a dispensary. It's very similar to getting income, say, from a lottery, which I know we do in New Jersey, and we actually rely on that income. But those kinds of taxes are really regressive. They fall the hardest on the people who are least able to afford them. And I think that, to the extent that we want to do something in the direction of reparations, social justice, and those kinds of things, that the funding stream should be a more equitable funding stream rather than a regressive tax of that sort. So I just wanted to make that point. It wasn't in my earlier comments.
Thank you, David. Okay, so Michelle had pointed out that there was someone that from the public that we need to give them an opportunity to speak. They didn't have a chance to speak last time or this time yet they were on the list. I'd also just like to get a thought from the council as to how much longer you're willing to stay in the meeting tonight, so we could let some other people that have not spoken get a chance to speak. But I'm not looking to have a marathon session again tonight like we did on March 29th, to be honest. So why don't we, if it's okay, play it by ear a little bit and allow some amount of public comment. But again, well, anyway, let's just play it by ear and see how it goes. But
Yeah, Mayor, if I could suggest, I'd like to sort of ask anybody who wants to speak to raise their hand or forever hold their peace. And if we see that we've got 50 or 60 hands up, that we not reopen that can of worms. But if the folks who have their hands up right now are the only ones who want to speak, I think I would be open to, extending this meeting till 9:30.
Okay.
Mayor, are you aware
yeah,
your
no,
camera's off?
Yeah, I am. Adam,
Okay.
Adam, can you do me a favor? I cannot turn my video back on. It says it's turned off by the host. So I guess I got you mad at me.
That's weird. Sorry about that.
It was a conspiracy. Don't worry about it. Okay. Michelle, I think you had mentioned Wei Wu was the
Yeah, he's on the top there. Yeah, he was the one who didn't get to speak.
All right. Adam, can we bring Wei in, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for giving me 3 minutes. So I will get to my point, then I will introduce myself a little bit if I have time. So I really hear carefully from both sides, for and against. If I hear each side, I feel like I hear a convincing, information, and the passion either for it or against it. So I try to find the common things between both sides. Then I found the following 4 things. The first one, both sides, they agree. The decriminalization of possession of the marijuana is a good thing. Second thing, I think both sides, they agree use even recreational marijuana is harmful for young people, adolescents. Both sides agree on that. Third thing, both sides agree that open the shops in the town, they will increase the possibility of crimes, increase the possibility, if I say the possibility. Now, the task force believe it won't happen in Princeton because this is Princeton. And also someone said, I remember in one of the meetings, if that happened, Princeton will deal with it. So that's the third thing I found they have a common things between both sides. And the last thing I found, both sides agree for people who wanted to use this for the recreational, it will be convenience for them. It will be convenience for them. So in summary, for me, for the benefit of convenience for people who really wants them, at the potential cost of the crime in this town, as well as the possibility, the potential risk for young people. So that is my conclusion for myself. I would not support open the shops in the town. Now, a little bit of background information about myself. I came to this country 29 years ago, and out of those 29, I spent 21 years in Princeton. And I grew up in China, but now I call this place my home. And my daughter was born in Princeton. When she was born, I congratulated her. I said, oh, now you're American now, because back then we were green card holders. But the doctor said, no, she's not American. She's Princetonian. So that's how we feel and we love this city. And again, my last sentence, all people, all of you, today, I think it gave me a great lesson, learning lesson, the democratic system, how it works. I really appreciate every one of you for giving me this lesson. So that's all I wanted to say. Again, thank you so much for giving me this 3 minutes. I give you back 5 seconds.
Thank you. All right, Adam, let's go down the list of people that have their hands up at this point and see where we are when we're done with that.
Okay, Mayor, next we have DLR.
Hi, my name is Dylan. I'm in the Riverside area. Coincidentally, I was at the last meeting, but I logged in late and I didn't have an opportunity to speak from the last meeting, but that's cool. The comments that I had prepared, I'm not going to read because they would be redundant. I just wanted to say that I am pleased with the outcome of the vote. And I just learned a lot through this process too, as I hope everyone did, that the CTF was a part of a process of discovery and analysis, the likes of which could not really be attained through a simple yes or no vote. And that I would encourage everyone involved in this conversation to consider the different reasons people vote in favor or against things and how we make compromises all the time when we participate in a democratic process. We couldn't alter the language in that amendment any more than we could in some people's interpretation of it, which I found very flat and somewhat unimaginative. Fortunately, this process has allowed that some of the complexities of the issue come to the surface, and that people like myself who voted in favor because they see drug use as a public health concern rather than a criminal one, in fact, we're not voting in favor of commercialization. And I appreciate the insights and the comments of the council members. That said, I learned one really fascinating thing by getting to know some of my neighbors better, and that is seeing a lot of new Americans participating in our democratic process. And I would urge anyone from now on to participate in any of these conversations to refrain from mentioning how long you've lived in Princeton and how many generations you've lived here. I think nativism is a very pernicious ideology. And I think it manifests in very subtle ways. Yeah. And so the number of folks that I've heard already participating in these conversations who've made claims to being in this town for multiple generations, yeah, should check it at the door. It has no place. It does not lend you any greater credibility than anyone else. And it's been a pleasure to participate with some of our new neighbors here as they've organized to voice their reservations about this process and to see how this process permits the participation of folks no matter how long they've lived in town or where they're from. Yeah. And so that's one of the things that I've learned so far. I appreciate the vote against. I appreciate the observations involving problems with this process. And I really appreciate our Board of Health and our Board of Education for acting independently here and for making statements with concerns for public health. And I express my reservations with those early dismissals of their conclusions, particularly that of the Board of Education by members of the council and by members of the CTF. And I would urge that if any process like this be renewed, that there be a more careful consideration of these independent governing bodies. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, Adam. I think,
okay, next we have, oh, sorry.
Okay.
Next we have Mei Tan.
Hello, hi, really appreciate the mayor and council. Really applaud your decision and really appreciate you got involved the town, the people here in the decision making. I listen to people. I learned a lot in this process as well, like the previous neighbor mentioned. So I also want to mention, like Mayor, you mentioned that maybe we will revisit this issue in a year or two. I hope the timeline gonna be a little longer. I suggest everyone to watch a TV series on Netflix, and the name of the TV series is Painkiller. It's Painkiller, so you can pay like $6 monthly, I guess, and you can watch the TV series. It's actually more like a documentary TV series. So it talks about the opioids painkiller. So Purdue Pharmaceutical, where they used to sell, the medicine that they claim is only 1% addiction rate. And this is they sell to the doctors, right? They spend a lot of money merchandising, advertising, and then it caused a lot of addiction. And over 10 years, it killed about like 1 million people. And that claim 1% addiction was actually much larger. Like, oh, the FDA, this was the FDA approved medicine, but still have a big side effect that even the government didn't see, right? So a lot of things like we need to take time to investigate, see how the impact really is. Like without time, a lot of the conclusion we made is very premature. And we can't really afford like to impact our kids or do experiment on our kids. So on CDC website, you can find like 30% of the marijuana use is misuse and 10% is addiction. It's much higher than the opioid painkiller. When you think about and the use, the kids, if they get exposed to marijuana earlier than supposed to, it could be very dangerous. So I hope, we can get some very careful thoughts to just wait, let the data come in, and then we can investigate. It takes time to really know what this new thing does, not just being legalized. And also, I think it's not, the dispensary is not going to help the illegal selling in the schools, because the legal dispensary is not going to sell to underage kids anyways, right? So it's not going to help with that issue. So just want you to keep that in mind as well. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Bob Schwartz.
Okay.
Whoops. Hi, this is Bob Schwartz, Square Avenue. Thanks to everyone on the council for their thoughts and their hours of patience on this issue. The retail cannabis issue shouldn't revolve around kids. Nobody wants our kids getting drunk or high, but the choice before us is not about whether the kids should smoke pot. Teens will continue to get it however they do now. They won't be buying weed from the proposed cannabis boutiques. These stores will only serve adults 21 and up. You can't get into these places until you show ID, have it entered into a database, and go through a locked door into a showroom. That's way more secure than buying alcohol, cigarettes, vaping supplies, or other things that might be abused by teens. And aesthetically, these pot shops look from the outside a lot more like a spa than a cluttered head shop. Inside, they look like an Apple store. To me, it makes sense to have one in the shopping center, which has plenty of storefronts, and one near the university, which has plenty of employees who can shop on their lunch hours. Yes, many people in the town are opposed to the stores, and many others would welcome them or be fine with them. We know which side is more animated, but we don't know which side would win a townwide vote, even if we chose to resolve it that way. Instead, we've had many groups in Princeton seriously consider this issue: the task force, various boards, many town departments. Notably, none of these bodies were fundamentally against the stores. The Board of Health wanted to have harm reduction education before the stores open, which can't hurt. And the school board members asked that the laws be enforced, half the tax go to the schools, and the shops be further away from the schools. Considering all the work that we've done, all the studies, I would hope that we proceed with the task force's plan, tweaked a bit for more education, in part through the schools, or if not, put it to a public vote in November. Philosophically, I'm troubled by bans, whether it's cigarettes, liquor, or cannabis. I prefer choice, and I support adults buying from a store or even starting a store. So I'd vote yes, and I would like to get the chance this fall. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Jenny Kremiller.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, Jenny.
Okay. The point I want to emphasize is that 75% of voters supported legalization and commercialization of cannabis. People who are negative about cannabis voted against. It's magical thinking to believe people voted in favor of cannabis dispensaries elsewhere, but not in Princeton. What would be divisive is ignoring the majority. It is obvious a vocal minority that is a vocal minority against. How can you say it's not a vocal minority given the vote? What we have is the very definition of a vocal minority. I think the council should listen to the strong majority at the voting booth. That's all I want to say. Thanks.
Thanks, Jenny.
Okay, next we have Jay Lee.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, good. Thank you. First of all, thank you for your time, and I applaud the decision to not to consider the issue at this time. And I'm very happy that the culture of Princeton can be preserved, because what we love about this town is that all our kids can go walk in town, hang out in town, ride bikes in town, and we parents feel safe to let them do that. But if we have cannabis dispensary in town, then we'll see long lines, police, traffic jams, and higher crime rates. And I think that will completely change the culture of this town, which we don't want to see. And I pass by this Zen Leaf all the time, and I always see long lines on Saturday and Sunday when there were when it was raining. I still see people holding umbrellas, lining up outside, and there were police standing out there. And I don't think that's what we want to see in this town, especially in downtown. And we already have so much traffic in town right now. So, and I also want to mention is that the cannabis has very repulsive smell. And I was in Philadelphia this weekend, and just that smell is just everywhere. And that would completely change the way we have been living in Princeton too. So I really appreciate all the hard work people have put in, and I'm very happy with the outcome, and would love to see Princeton continue to be a very family-friendly town, and everyone can feel safe and happy in town. So that's what I have to, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Abigail Kalmbach.
Hi, how are you? Thank you to the task force, to council, Mayor Frida. I've spoken before. I am the one vocal person who wants to open a dispensary in this town, and I'm not happy with the decision tonight, but I also think that the decision tonight was the best decision for this town. I think that it's really important for us to have more conversations where we're spending time in dialogue and not having 3 minutes of prepared speeches going back and forth at each other. I am really hoping that in the coming months, we can come together and have more conversations about cannabis. Cannabis is here. It's been here in our culture, or in our culture and civilization for thousands of years. There's 100 years of prohibition, and so we've forgotten how to deal with the plant. But now it's legal, and we should find ways of talking about cannabis with our children, with our neighbors, with our colleagues. And we're hoping to continue these conversations on a monthly basis in the coming months to discuss how you can have intentional cannabis use, also what to do for prevention and for teen prevention and misuse amongst adults as well. There's a lot of information out there on cannabis. There's a lot that goes back and forth on either side. But overall, there's what we've noticed today and noticed over the past few months is that people care very strongly about Princeton and want to have the best for this town. That's what I want as well. I don't want to open up a store in this town that, even if it's a vocal minority, that they don't want me here. But I do want to provide space for people who want to learn more about cannabis. Throughout my speaking publicly about this, I've had a number of people reach out to me to talk to me about their intractable medical issues that they haven't been able to get resolved with their doctors using traditional Western medicine. And I've been able to talk to them about different ways that cannabis could help them. And that's something which I feel very passionately about, and something that I will continue providing that service to people and creating more opportunities to talk about this plant. So thank you to all involved here. This was a lot of time that you guys all put into it. I think in part because this is a very important plant that has the power to bring us together and have conversations. And I hope it doesn't divide this town. And I'm looking forward to working together with everybody to continue the conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're going to take, there's 2 more hands up, so we'll take those 2 comments, and then I think it'll be time to adjourn the meeting. So let's bring those 2 in, obviously one at a time, Adam, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay, next we have Deidre.
Yes, I just want to say I was one of those kids that smoked pot when I was going to school, and it started in the morning. Then I'd go out between classes and have some. I just want to say that I graduated high school by the skin of my teeth. And what happened was that I got into into going to meetings, and I got clean and sober. It's always made it a lot easier for me, the fact that there wasn't pot just kind of like everywhere. And unfortunately, having a dispensary in town would just be, I would just be like a magnet to it. And I definitely don't want to go through that. And I don't think anybody should go through it. But I've been off of pot for 41 years now, and I just don't want to, I don't want to be tempted. So my vote would be no.
Thank you. Okay. Yep, there we go.
Okay, next we have Jing Conover.
Hi, are you there?
Hello, hello.
Hi.
You can hear me now?
Yes, we
Yeah.
can.
Nice, yeah, so nice to see everyone. We came in 3 years ago, and my name is Jane Conover. I'm a public school world language teacher. I'm also a parent. I started with a little bit of my personal story because I never know how strong these marijuana or opium was, only when I was having a major surgery years ago. And then right after surgery, the nurse, the male nurse came in. I remember his name, Vincent. And he gave me this kind of stuff that really helped me get rid of the pain. I was so grateful. I keep begging for that because without it, I can't really go for good sleep. And eventually on the 3rd or the 4th time, he said, Jean, anybody do what you are having that you keep telling me you have good dream or good sleep without the pain bothering you is opium. And right upon that moment, I realized that I should stop. Even though innermost of my heart, I appreciate, I'm so happy. I said, my doctor prescribed this to me. I'm so grateful. But I said, thanks, and you told me this. So I'm doing this, I'm grateful. These are available to us with adults, with conscience, with all of these fungi. I know what these are. When I was for that surgery, when I was recovering, I know that I'm benefit. But again, I need to know how the kids are going to deal with it. And sometimes when I'm dealing with my 7-year-old son, he was asking me, Mama, is this correct? Is this correct? Why people still do it? Sometimes when I'm dealing with my classroom students, Dr. Jing, why this is happening? I don't even know how to direct them because I can only say, knowing something is not enough. Knowing something and you use what you know to direct your action, to help you make a fine decision upon the circumstances, that is called knowledge. In Chinese, we say 知行合一. So in a way, we all talk about these pros and cons, to do's or not to do's, what is beneficial, what is the one we should take preventative measures. I think the bottom line is that if we consider our current generation, I am an educator, I'm worried. Our current generation, these young people, my son, my teenage students in the high school, in middle school, if this generation has to deal with, there are a lot of confusions. They have to deal with the pandemic. They have to deal with this division in our different kind of social equity, the beliefs. I know. Everybody's coming to this and then give everybody a forum to express the ideas. I'm so happy I got a chance to talk. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
And you too. Thank you. Okay, I just want to thank everyone for participating tonight. It was another good meeting, nice exchange. So we appreciate that. Okay. Would anyone like to make a motion? David?
I move that we adjourn.
Okay, I see about 3 seconds. So all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay.